The first 6-week phase of the Gaza ceasefire expires today. Hamas militants have released dozens of hostages in exchange for Israel setting free thousands of Palestinian prisoners. Under the terms of the agreement, fighting is to remain suspended as long as the two sides negotiate over a second stage. Those talks began in Cairo on Thursday but have so far been inconclusive.
The ruins of northern Gaza. Palestinians returning to their destroyed homes, hoping the ceasefire holds. The 6 weeks of the ceasefire have been rocky, with Israel and Hamas accusing each other of multiple violations. But the next phase is likely to be even harder. The outlines of a second 42-day phase have been in place since last year. The deal foresees a permanent end to the fighting and a complete Israeli military withdrawal from Gaza. Hamas would release around 60 Israeli hostages or their remains. Israel would release more Palestinian prisoners. Talks on the future government of Gaza are also supposed to begin. But the details are complicated. Negotiators were supposed to iron out differences during Phase 1, but spent much of their time dealing with crises. A major sticking point is the so-called Philadelphia corridor on the Gaza side of the border with Egypt, near the city of Rafah. Israel took it over during its war in Gaza and is scheduled to leave. But Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has not yet publicly stated that he will follow through. He faces pressure from right-wing members of his cabinet to maintain a military presence in the corridor. But there's also widespread public pressure to bring back the rest of the hostages as soon as possible. Gazans face a bleak future no matter what. Talks about reconstruction are only meant to start after the second phase of the ceasefire is over, when and if that happens.
Right, let's bring in Hans-Jakob Schindler, a Senior Director at the Counter-Extremism Project. Good to see you. Phase 1 of the truce is due to end in a couple of hours, but Israel is pushing now for a 42-day extension. Why is that?
Look, I mean, as expected, Phase 1 went rather smoothly because Phase 1 was fully negotiated. It was clear how many hostages are going to be released. It was clear how many prisoners are going to be released. So it was a pretty easy way to implement this. Phase 2 has not been really outlined except the general points that your report just mentioned, and we are not there yet. Including, of course, we're not there that politically on the Israeli side or on the Hamas side, because now really the question is, what's the future of Gaza? And Hamas wants to be in Gaza, maybe not being the dominant force, but wants to survive in Gaza, which is, of course, something that Israel absolutely cannot accept.
So we've talked a little about the sticking points. Talks are underway in Egypt over a second phase, but what is the common ground in these negotiations now looking for a Phase 2?
Look, both sides at the moment, and that's why this extension of the ceasefire would actually be good for both sides. The Hamas can always claim it got prisoners out of the prison in front of its population. Israel gets the hostages back. But Israel is also quite conscious of the fact that if there is no idea about future security within the Gaza Strip, and if the IDF continues to withdraw from the Gaza Strip, there's only one other armed power in Gaza at the moment, that is Hamas. So it would be handing over the Gaza Strip, nolens volens, back to Hamas.
One particular area where Israel must withdraw its troops is from the so-called Philadelphia corridor, the long strip of land between southern Gaza adjoining Egypt. Why is this corridor so decisive?
Well, first of all, there are a couple of legal reasons. The ceasefire agreement or the peace agreement between Egypt and Israel actually means that there shouldn't be any troops in that corridor. But for Israel, this corridor is crucial. The resupply of Hamas happened through tunnels, most of which went through that corridor. So they have to make sure that on the one hand, on the Egyptian side, the Egyptian security forces are doing their bit to prevent this tunnel network from being reestablished, from Hamas being able to get more weapons and ammunition into the Gaza Strip. But since there is no governing force in Gaza, if the IDF withdraws from the corridor, it would be very easy for Hamas to, from that side, again, try to resupply itself.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is facing pressure from within his far-right coalition to continue the war. How likely is it that we will see a second phase of this truce unfold, do you think?
It's extraordinarily complex. I've already outlined the still opposing aims. Hamas wants to survive as a organization, potentially to rebuild also as a terror group in the future in the Gaza Strip. And Israel, absolutely understandably, after what happened on the 7th of October 2023, the pogrom-like attack of Hamas against Israel, cannot accept, neither security-wise nor politically, that Hamas as a structure is going to survive in Gaza. But we have no idea or no agreement or no real volunteers to provide security in the Gaza Strip other than the IDF. Inside the coalition, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, Ben-Gvir have already left because the ceasefire agreement even started. Smotrich said he would leave if there is any movement on the Philadelphia corridor and the second phase of the ceasefire agreement, i.e. a talk about governing Gaza other than by Israel. That would diminish the majority in the Knesset to less than a majority for the prime minister, and his government would break down. And I have not seen any good ideas on how Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to square that circle.
As talks continue, Hans-Jakob Schindler, Senior Director at the Counter-Extremism Project. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much.